Art has been around for over 40,000 years, starting from cave paintings to Victorian glass, all the way to now in a digital age where anyone has access to a blank screen to doodle on. But not only has art changed in how we make it, but it's also changed how it affects people, history, and human creativity. Through different forms of expression, let's find out the importance of keeping certain forms alive, how people use them in their lives, and the value of keeping old mediums relevant today. Let's see their art from the heart. Hello everyone, my name is Ken Vonderberg, and you're watching Art from the Heart, a show talking about the importance of art and how it still resonates with people, why it's still around, and how we can contribute to preserving it. To better understand the process of art and what it means to people, we reached out and met someone who pulls their art on a brush.
I think that the thing that drew me to painting the most is just the fluidity of the medium. I think a lot of things like drawing and drafting, your more technical things, there's so many rules to it. There's things that you can't really break, but with painting there's just so much. You can put your whole self into it. There's so much you can do with the color. There's so much you can do with the medium. You can play with the liquidness of it. You can add stuff to it. There's just so much more I feel like I can do with painting and express what I'm actually trying to get across that's so hard to do with just like a pencil. A lot of getting good is just constantly doing the things you don't want to do so that you're better at the things that you actually enjoy doing. So I guess really the hardest thing to get where I am was just disciplining myself and understanding that I have a lot of moments where I'm just like, I don't feel like I'm that good at painting. I don't feel like I'm that good at art, but you need to be able to tell yourself like, no, you're still young, you're at the stage you're learning. The biggest thing is just telling yourself that it's okay to not be the best. Get the hard work done, and then you can really enjoy yourself in the end once you get to a point where you feel like you can take the idea in your head and put it on a piece of paper. I think today the biggest threat to the devaluing of art, like physical arts like painting, I think is just society's desire for everything to be easy, accessible, for things to be available at their fingertips, to be able to generate something with a prompt, with AI, or just draw something up and print it digitally. But I think like projects like this, like just people who genuinely love art and can recognize that, I think they are the ones almost as much as the artists who are keeping it alive. I think if other people who just aren't the ones making the art, if they can come out and recognize and shine light on the artists who are making these things, I think that's how we can keep it alive. I don't think that all these traditional techniques will ever go out, because I think that there are so many people who truly do love and feel passionate towards them, and I really think that like that's what's going to keep it going, almost as much as like the artists themselves using it. We can survive without art, but can we really live? I don't think so, because I think, well, art has been around since humans could live in caves, and what were they doing? They were making art, they were making their presence known, they were documenting what they were doing. And I think art serves so many purposes that people just aren't aware of in society. Art can be political, it can make you feel so many kinds of ways. Honestly, I feel like it's more about what's not going through my head. It's more, I kind of enter a state of like, I'm just so locked in on this one thing. A lot of like, I have the most fun doing painting because of like the color, the way that I can play with all the colors. And all my paintings, like if I'm shading something that's brown, it's not gonna be just all brown. I'm gonna have like purple, I'm gonna have yellow, I'm gonna have every color of the rainbow in there somehow. And I guess when I'm painting, it's just naturally coming to me. I picture what I'm trying, like the color that I wanna achieve, and I can just, my mind is so blank that I just know what to mix up. So honestly, it's more of like, my mind is just so blank when I'm painting that everything just like flows so nicely. Obviously, there's so much historical significance to it. You know, we have all these old famous painters, but you know, especially in a time like this where everything can be digital, everything can be so easy, it's really easy to forget about it and to just let it die out, be one of those forgotten crafts. But I think that painting, like these fine arts, people keep doing them for a reason. I keep doing them because it's such a privilege to be able to take what I'm feeling inside and to take a paintbrush and to be able to put it down on paper. And that's such a special experience to me that I cannot imagine a world in the future where if painting was gone, if all these personal handcrafted techniques like this, if they just went obsolete. And I just can't imagine the future living through that, not being able to have that opportunity, because these mediums that let you express yourself so deeply, I think that they're just so important to the human experience. I think that it's something that, you know, everyone has their thing, but I think that it's always going to be someone's thing. It's beautiful. I think painting, it can be applied in every area of society, and I cannot fathom going out onto the streets and living in a world without painting.
Well, painting is one of the best ways to express a person's emotions and self-expression. Preserving it certainly is one of the pillars of art as a medium. And today we'll be talking about the importance of preserving that art through teaching. Today I have with me Julie Feiter, an instructor at Cedarburg High School. Thanks a lot for joining us today,
Absolutely.
Julie.
Thank you.
And I do have some questions for you. To start, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what inspired you to become an art teacher?
I actually started my early career as an art therapist, and loved how much that promoted in my clients, and had the opportunity to become an art educator and saw how that also could be something that I could bring my own art making through and reach even more early artists.
How long have you been teaching?
I've been teaching a little bit over 20 years, and then I was a therapist for about 12.
A long career.
Right.
What kind of skills do you teach your students?
Well, in addition to the how to draw, how to paint, how to sculpt, we teach them critical thinking skills, how to think outside the box, which sounds very stereotypical, but it's very true. How to brainstorm, how
Certainly.
to get past the obvious thought and the obvious idea and push past that.
All things that are valuable for an artist to learn.
Absolutely.
Why do you believe that art education is important for students today?
It's absolutely important. As our world is changing faster than many of us can even keep up with, as things become more digital and more automated, it's going to be even more important that our students that are leaving our schools have the ability to as I say, have this design and engineering model where they're brainstorming, they're modeling, they're thinking critically, they're working with peers to find a better solution, and all of that is done in the art room. All of that is done through thinking about an idea and practicing and reflecting.
So it's really a broad range of skills that you are trying to instill in students.
Absolutely.
Not just being able to hold a pencil or a brush.
Absolutely.
How do you think technology has changed the way artists create and share their work?
Dramatically. If you think about even social media, artists that may have had difficulty finding an audience for their work, you put some of your work on Instagram, and I have artists that I'm aware of that overnight had 6,000 new followers, and it changed their lives. But in the classroom, I think it is a challenge because as we, for example, teach graphic design or any of like Photoshop or Adobe programs, overnight it's changing what the students know and what they're capable of.
So there's really a lot to maintain your skills.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that you have to constantly learn, even as a professional artist. We've come pretty far in art since it started 40,000 years ago. Do you think art will continue to change, or do you think we're close to reaching the full potential of art, or the final potential?
I don't think so. As digital means become so much more prolific, I think it's going to be even more important that we have a grounding in the production of art, manually made, handmade art, sort of ground ourselves as the digital age comes on. But I think having that integration is going to explode and expand the opportunities.
What kind of impact has art left on your students?
I would say massively. I have students that maybe are not pursuing art as a degree, but they've gone on to other fields, and they maintain art as something that is a stress reliever, as a creative outlet. So even if students aren't saying that that's going to be, what they do as a living, it becomes a pivotal part of their life.
So art can be sort of a jumping off point for a lot of other experiences in life.
Absolutely.
With a lot of hobbies and interests that kids have today, you think it's important to continue passing on the knowledge from one generation to the next of the art world?
Absolutely. I believe that just as ancient cultures passed on their art forms, we're going to continue doing that.
Wonderful.
From generation to generation.
Thanks very much for being with us today, Julie. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Passing down the knowledge of art to future generations is so important to sustain it, although there are many other forms of art, not just painting. Now let's take another look at someone who admires art no matter what shape they make it.
When I was in high school, I loved art, and it was my passion then. And my art teacher had a potter come into the high school to talk about what he did. He was also a poet, and so it was just really mesmerizing, and it was really interesting to find out that someone could possibly make a living doing this type of thing. And so that did inspire me actually to try to become a potter, and I pursued it. I ended up going to art school and then apprenticing, and so it's been something that I wanted to do, and it fulfilled my dream. It brings a connection into your life, and it brings a little bit more beauty, curiosity, again, because of like, well, how was this made? Oh, an artist drew that, or when people say they enjoy my imagery so much, it cheers them up in the morning when they get their cup of coffee, because I've created a fun image for them to look at and appreciate. And as my customers get to know me, they learn more about my personality and feel really connected. So again, the worth is in the connection. Well, many artists, I think, including myself, are inspired by our environments. So, for instance, the natural world, of course, animals, plants, Even everyday objects around the house kind of inspire me for my imagery that I carve onto my pieces. I'm also inspired to make functional objects that people can use in their homes every day. That's super, super important to me. And why that is because it's a way for me to connect to others, bring beauty into their lives, and also kind of have a little intimate relationship with them at home just by having them use a bowl or a mug that I make, and I hope it brings them joy. I get a lot of satisfaction from making the pottery, throwing it on the wheel, trimming. My favorite part is the decorating, where I paint, draw, and then carve my imagery onto the pieces. I really find that enjoyable, but it does, since I do this professionally and for my living, and I do it all the time, it does get a little tedious though too. So it's kind of a lot of pleasure and then some tediousness with it all. Challenges, many challenges in terms of not being prepared on the business end of the work. Since this is my job and my passion, the making of the pieces and the desire to make and create comes easy, but figuring out the business end has taken me years and years, and I'm still learning because business is always changing, the market is changing, and technology's changing, so it's a constant challenge to maintain the business end of it. But I've learned a ton from my colleagues and peers and friends in the industry, and that makes a world of difference. I think art in general enhances our daily living because it tells a story. It's a learning process, even if you're just viewing it yourself. It makes you think about how that object was made, why it was made, what the purpose of the object is. So art is a really great way to engage the mind and the spirit. And when it's a physical object, so if we bring it back to pottery, it's something that causes us to connect with that physical object. If it's like, when we're using a bowl or a mug, it's a very intimate thing we're doing, right? We're feeding ourselves with it. And to think about how the object was made, who made it, the story behind that person, the connection you might have to that person or artist, really brings connection to people's lives. And I think inherently we all need connection. We need each other. We need each other's stories. We learn from one another that way. And it just brings us so much knowledge and really, but I do think it's really a credible service or thing to do. And I also want to speak to, I think we as people or human beings, we inherently want to create, build, make things. If we just were stagnant all day or didn't interact with anybody, I think we would lose our will to live. And so creating, watching others create, sharing that knowledge and that creativity really brings joy and meaning into our lives.
Doing pottery seems like one of the most relaxing things you can practice. If you're interested in doing so, you just need to make sure you take the time to learn how to do it properly. Speaking of learning to do things, here with me is someone who is currently going to school to learn how to be a teacher of the arts. Brianna Madsen, how are you doing, Brianna?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming today and talking with us. I have some questions for you. Did you always see yourself as a teacher, or did you decide that would come later?
Honestly, no. I started out theater very early in life, and it was mostly acting that I was a part of. And I came pretty quickly to know that I wanted to be a teacher and kind of spread outwards with my arts knowledge.
So you decided that being able to disseminate that knowledge to other people was important to you.
For sure.
And becoming a theater instructor was something that sort of was a natural follow-on to your being an actor.
Progression.
Is that right?
For sure.
So what excites you the most about learning and one-day teaching theater?
One-day teaching, I think that theater really changed me growing up and acting and performing. And I think I want to be able to spread that gift to others. And, you know, I think the young generation really needs to have art implicated into their lives. And there's so many positives to it. And so
do you think you've learned anything about yourself from any of the plays or musicals that you were in?
absolutely. I was able to just grow as a person in general, and I built a lot of confidence off of what I was doing. But for sure, I learned so much about myself through the process of performing.
So being confident about yourself in the theater sort of spills over into your everyday life.
I learned a lot of life skills through theater in general, yes.
What skills do you think students learn from the theater arts that they don't get elsewhere?
Well, currently I teach a lot of younger kids, and I think a big thing is they have so much imagination, and being able to, you know, express themselves with their voice, with their body. They learn a lot as young people, and again, they gain a lot of skills in life through that.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that theater is sometimes undervalued? And if so, why do you think that?
Oh, absolutely, they are. I don't necessarily understand why. I think that through theater, you just learn so many valuable skills. And
Do you think that perhaps the ubiquitous nature of broadcast television, of streaming, of all of the other visual arts that we see has something to do with people sort of moving away from legitimate theater?
For sure. I think live theater, which is what I specialize in, is important. It's creative in the moment, it's on the spot, and you know, I think that sort of theater should be valued just as much as any sort of other.
With on-the-spot live theater, you don't get a do-over, do you?
No,
you don't get to
no,
say cut and
it's happening whether you like it or not, and there's a lot of quick thinking and improv that comes with that.
Which could be valuable in daily life as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Do you think major changes in society impact the views or interests people have about theater?
Yeah, I think, you know, theater and social change plays a huge role in all that. I think in general there's a lot that can be learned from performances and stories that are being told, and there can be a huge impact on communities and whoever's there to watch and take in the performance that's being given.
You know, live theater has a long history, like 2,000 years.
Oh yeah.
And yet it's still around. Why do you think people do go to live theater in this technologically driven world?
I think it's incredibly moving to have an entire audience there. You're all watching and experiencing something live in the moment. And I think it carries a lot of emotion through that, and just a sort of like humanness of seeing someone give their heart out on stage and do what they love and ultimately tell a story.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us today, Brianna. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you have it. Art has the ability to not only show human expression, but also to change people's perspectives on life. We learned that painting can let out so many feelings of self and creativity. We learned that pottery can be fulfilling and take time and hardship to do, but ultimately lifts people up. And now teaching is is crucial to the meaning and value of art. We should not push art to the side just because other things are more convenient, but we should appreciate and support it because it's an extension of humanity. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.